Okay, so we should be live now. Uh, uh, I'm fashionably late as always, and just as an FYI, the reason I started 5 minutes after the hour is sort of so I can be a little late and still be on time, but also, I don't know, just because people often have things that end on the hour, and so 5 minutes after the hour is generally when I like to start things because you give people a little time to arrive. So, yes, that is my rationale. Anyways, it's great to see everyone. Today should be an interesting and maybe a little unusual stream. I'm going to try things a bit different than normal, so that's fun. Let me go like this and do that. I'm just making sure everything is nicely set up here. So today was a bit of a crazy day. I don't know how many folks watched all of the videos, but we had obviously the Denver video, which I was really excited about, and I hope people enjoyed that. It seemed like a lot of people watched it, so maybe people can let me know in the comments, is there a certain reason that you watched it? Is there a certain thing you liked about it? XYZ. I'm really curious. It's super helpful to know, why people watch something, what they thought of it, because from my end, it's just, oh, it got X number of views, it did this well compared to your other videos, which is stressful. And so, leave it in the chat box and I'll take a look in a bit as to, why people maybe thought today's video was good. At the same time, I did a collab with Downey Live. So if you haven't seen that, let me drop the link in the... That was the video, because my audio is set to play out loud, which I probably should change, so let's do that. I'm going to put the link here in the chat so you can watch that if you didn't watch it, though you probably did if you're here. If you didn't, I think it's a really fun video. I'd love to do more stuff that's vlog style, as I've said in the past, and I have some stuff I've done in the past that tends to be like my favorite videos are the vlog style ones, especially visiting lots of SkyTrain or subway stations. And so that's something you can definitely expect more of in the future. So let me think. I have a list of things I want to mention here. The first thing is thank you so much to YouTube members and Patreon supporters who are either here in the stream or not. It's really appreciated, and it's a great way to help support the channel. But of course, also just sharing, liking, commenting, all of these things are super helpful. They help me reach new audiences, and they help me grow and promote transit to more people, which is ultimately, I think, what we all want is more people thinking about transit, which means more people voting about transit, more people riding transit, and more transit for everyone, right? Which is it's quite a good objective, I think. So there's that. There's also, let's see. I'm just looking here. So yeah, just this regular reminder, the link to the next stream is down below. I'm gonna start alternating from now on. I think I said I would do this a long time ago and then I didn't, so apologies if you live in Asia or Australia and I was streaming in the middle of the night. I'm gonna alternate from now on, so 1 week will be earlier, 1 week will be later, and that way it caters to people in Europe for one, and in Asia for the other, and North Americans like me can watch pretty much either stream because it's a Saturday. So if you have time, it can be fun. So there's that. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else here. Yeah, I think that's mostly it for now. Let me just trying to. Okay, pop out chat. Okay, here we go. So now I can see the chat properly, and cool. So yeah, hopefully I can respond to some chat messages. I also want to discuss the sort of topic of the day, which is the difference between great transit and good transit, because I think it's important. Okay, I'm really hoping. Making sure this is all looking good. I'll go through the chat in a second, but I'm trying to think. There was another topic that was in my head that I should discuss. So I just want to see if I can remind myself what that was. Okay, it's escaping me now. So I'll go through a few chat messages, and I'm going to talk about what divides transit systems, what divides the good from the bad, and the like, and why I think some systems like LA Metro actually get a lot of things right. So I think that could be an interesting conversation to have. But yeah, if you are just getting into the stream now, as I think a lot of people are, a lot of people watch today's videos, well, I guess there was two, but today's video on my channel and seem to enjoy it. If you did, please leave a comment in the chat as to what you liked about it, or what made you want to watch it, because a lot of people watched it and I would love to make more videos that people enjoy watching. So let's see, just making sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so let's quickly look at the chat, and then I'm going to go through that topic. So I'm just going to fly through here, and I'm not going to respond to every comment. That's something I'm realizing I can't really do because it ends up taking up way too much of the time on the stream, but I will respond to a lot of them. Someone's asking, how was filming with Mike? It was really fun. I'm not used to it though, especially because Mike is a proper vlogger, and he's got like his mirrorless camera on a Joby GorillaPod and all. So it was a little unusual, but it was really fun, and he was an awesome guy. So that was fun, and it definitely inspired me to want to do more vlog style stuff, because it's always been the thing that I've enjoyed doing the most. It's just the thing that requires the most pre-planning and the like. Let me just scroll down here. So yes, there will be another stream in 2 weeks. I'm not sure what that will be. I guess that will be like the 9th. Yeah. So there'll be another stream then that'll be more catered to the time zone that most people in Europe would be in. What do you think about low capacity LRT connecting Canmore and Banff? I think that you should do like a regional rail light type thing, such as Tex Rail. People are saying the Downey live video is good. That's great to hear. Someone's saying, I often watch your videos about rail in my country, but take interest in rail around the world. And that's something I want to foster. It's always interesting when I have conversations with people who they're super interested in rail or in transit, but only in one place. And I think that that's a missed opportunity. Oh, it looks like we have a super chat. Which are thoughts on the Chicago L? After I answer this question about, or this comment about rail around the world, I'll make sure to respond to that. The thing I find so interesting is a lot of people are like that. They're interested in transit, but only in their kind of local area. And I'm definitely still more interested in transit in Toronto than, say, in Mexico City or in New York or in other places, because I live here, and so naturally I should be interested in it. Though, okay, there are a few cities that I might even be more interested in than Toronto, but I think it's important to sort of fight back against the feeling that you should be obsessed with transit, or that you should only think about your sort of local area. There's so much to learn and from other places. And often what you'll hear from people in all kinds of cities when they're justifying a transit project or saying this or that is we have to do this because something... Let me turn the volume down here. I think it's a little too loud. We have to do something because it's not possible, or because no one else does this, or XYZ. And if you have the knowledge of other cities, it's so easy to say, oh, you're saying we can't do this, but X city does this, so clearly it isn't actually impossible. And I think it's useful, and it gives you context. It's in the same way that travel is really valuable, because you get to see other cultures, you get to see other places and the like. I think that learning about other systems and learning about other cities is super useful, because as it turns out, as I said in my Denver video today, every city does something well, and being able to say, hey, this is what one city does well, this is what another city does well, this is what this city does well, it's so valuable for being able to advocate, but also just for being knowledgeable about transit and having a sense of what is and isn't possible. And I think I have another video that I'm going to make about this with a special guest. So yeah, that's coming. Niagara Falls is definitely beautiful. Everyone saying hi back to you. It is much appreciated. What do you think of the Eglinton Crosstown? Would it be considered good transit? I think it could have been better transit, but I think all transit is good transit, and electrified transit is better, and rail transit is great too. But We shouldn't aim for good, we should aim for great, and that's something I am going to talk about. Are Australians a large proportion of your audience? Yeah, definitely. Probably because Australians also speak English, and so it's natural that a lot of Australians would watch my channel. But actually, they're not the largest contingent, of course, because I am Canadian. But I don't even think Canadians are the largest contingent. I have a lot of American viewers. But, you know, I would be happy if it was evenly divided between a bunch of countries, maybe with a slight lead to Canada since I'm in Canada. But yes, I'm going to answer a few more of these, and actually, I'm going to answer the super chat about the Chicago L. My thoughts on it: it's a system with so much potential. It's obviously quite extensive, but it's got a lot of problems, right? It's got a lot of dated features. The rolling stock, even the new rolling stock, doesn't feel modern, and it should, because it's a system that deserves to have great modern rolling stock. The infrastructure needs way more attention. It's good to see things like the red-purple modernization, but I'd like to see even more in the future. And it's a system that, while it is good to see extensions like the red line extension, it's a system that really could use a circle line, right? So those are sort of my thoughts on the Chicago L. And it's a system that I will visit eventually. I mean, I visited before, but visit with a camera and film it and do a ton of videos, because it's one of those systems that is special. You know, there's lots of old transit systems, like, you know, across the northeastern US, across Europe, etc. And there's lots of big transit systems, as I talk about all the time: Shanghai, Mexico City, etc., etc., etc. But there are a few systems that are truly special, and Chicago is one of the systems that you visit it, you look at it, you ride it, and you're like, okay, clearly this is a special, historic, but just a system of significance, because it did a lot of things before other cities did things, and it inspired a lot of other cities, and so it's just an awesome system, and so it's one I will cover a lot more in the future. Good versus great transit in medium-sized cities, definitely something I'll address. Can public transit travel on scenic routes? Sure, sometimes. Good evening from Rio de Janeiro, the city that repels new rail lines. Very, very sad. But the trams are nice, but you know how I feel about trams sometimes. But they are truly nice. No jokes on that. Thoughts on East-West Rail opening from Oxford to the Cambridge line? Is new regional rail still necessary? I would say regional rail is super important, because people are always going to need to travel those medium distances. A lot of urban rail is more focused on commuting, but going between different regions is something that I think people always need to do, for whether it be for, I don't know, for because they want to visit some sort of event, or because they want to see some sort of attraction, or if they want to visit family, or if they want to go for reasons that aren't just work, because COVID is probably going to affect work, though not as much as many people think. But it's not going to affect whether people want to go to an amusement park, or an exhibition, or a cool restaurant, or go to see their family. And so I think regional rail is maybe more relevant than ever. And I think that the low cost of implementing it, when done right, means it's such a great form of transit. Thanks for covering the Indian metros. Lots of other good projects going on. Yeah, definitely. The bullet train and the RRTS are awesome projects to see. Have you heard of the ventilation problems on the San Francisco Central Subway? I know there have been lots of problems. I didn't know. I don't think I've heard of the ventilation problem specifically. Who narrated earlier videos such as the future of Go Transit? I have someone who works on the channel with me, who has been part of the channel for some time, but unfortunately, because people were, let's just say, inconsiderate and the like, that person no longer wants to publicly participate on the channel, which is rough. But YouTube can be kind of rough sometimes. Just being a public figure on the internet can be rough sometimes, and it's crazy, you know, getting lots of comments and the like, and most people are totally nice, but there is a small group of people who are not nice at all. So yeah. Okay, let me just quickly go through the rest of these, and I'm going to get on to talking about some of the details of my main topic for the day. Good video today. I had not thought of Denver as doing things right, and Denver does lots of things wrong, and people were commenting, oh, I live in Denver and I don't like Denver's regional rail, and like, yeah, I get it, but this is what I'm talking about when I say cities do small things right. You can do a lot of small things right and still have a bad transit system, right? or have a transit system that residents don't like, or have a transit system that some residents don't like. But if you can take those good elements and put them into other cities, you can build up a better system. Oh, Long Branch Mike has entered the chat. The iconic Long Branch Mike. Very famous character in the Toronto transit space. Go check him out on Twitter. What's your favorite London Underground line? Mine is the Victoria Jubilee line. Wow, what an interesting question. Really, that's an interesting question. I would say it's a tie. It's a three-way tie between the Jubilee District and Piccadilly lines. Hello from Singapore. Hello there. Singapore video coming soon. Seriously, it's next week or two. Do you think Boston will ever get an RER-style tunnel between North and South stations? I certainly hope so. Can you do a video on the Southern Highlands line in New South Wales? Because it's one of the most beautiful lines. Eventually. Yes, I will. Will the old GO Transit cab cars get retired or repainted? It seems they're being repainted. Yeah, wooden stations on the loop is one of those things that the Chicago L could really work on. A modern building quickly looks dated, while when executed in classic style is timeless. Might be better to try for classic rolling stock, but with modern features. I agree somewhat. I think that certain designs, like the Silverliner, have these sort of fundamental features that I think are not ever going to look amazing. For example, when you have equipment that's attached to the car and it looks scabbed on, I believe that's the way that engineers and planners often describe that style of infrastructure. Basically, when something looks like it's kind of glued on, it doesn't feel like it's a cohesive part of the design of something, and that can be the same as like a concrete guideway on an elevated system, for example. Some systems, the pipes would be like hanging on the outside. Some they would be like integrated within. Those are the sort of elements that the Silverliner has that just feel like bad design. They don't feel like it's something that could be made better, and it could still be stainless steel or whatever. Though I'm not a huge fan of stainless steel, as many know. Thanks for saying it was the best. Though I'm still curious. I haven't seen many comments. What did people think of the Denver video? What did they like about it? Because it was popular and I want to know why. Almost at the bottom here. What are shuttle bus services good for? Good for connecting destinations that wouldn't justify a full bus route, or for connecting up neighborhoods with maybe on-demand services and the like. Do you think Science Center Station on the Ontario line should be moved underground to better connect with Line 5? The problem is that because of the way Line 5 station at Science Center is built, just below the surface, you're going to have to do this dive from elevated to pretty deep underground. So, well, it would probably lead to a better transfer. I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world. I also do think that there is a legitimate argument to be made that that station is largely going to be a bus-served station, because the eastern part of the crosstown, as I often talk about, is not necessarily ideal. So when you think of it that way, i.e., if you're not necessarily going to take the if you're at Kennedy, or even if you're on the eastern part of the crosstown, you might go back to Kennedy, take line 2 to the Ontario line, because it will be faster and more convenient and more reliable. So that side makes me think that the transfer is fine. The transfer from buses, which will be a lot of the traffic, will be fine. And for people coming from the west, well, you're probably not going to be taking the Ontario line, because if you're west of the Ontario line, you're just going to take the Yonge line. And the same for the transfer from people going up to the Eglinton line, right? I don't think that many people are going to be going north. Some will, but that's my general thinking. So, I'm making a video about overhead wires and third rail, so stay tuned for that. Do you prefer scenic drives to highways? That really depends. Oh, come on, Long Branch Mike, you are very famous. Could a new Transway tube accommodate both BART and Caltrain on dual gauge? Probably, but you might want to just build 4 tubes. I think that's the type of thing that might be possible in some places, but I don't believe we would execute it well in North America. GO Transit's 15-minute service plan is awesome, and I'm actually going to do a video about it. The 15-minute service on the bus plan, that is. Denver video is great, people say. Because there was a train on the front. Good to know. Can BRT be done effectively in towns? Definitely. It's, I think, the perfect high-order transit solution for towns. Do you purposely put yourself doing funny faces in your thumbnails? well, yeah, to some extent. I think it's kind of fun, to be honest. Like, I'm trying to. It can be hard to get across emotion in videos, and a funny face that does try to convey some emotion is a good way of doing that, I think. It also does make people want to click, which is important because that's sort of what runs the whole show here at RMTransit. So that is, I've gone through all of the current messages in the chat, and I'm going to start talking about the pauses to think. The topic of today, the division between great transit and good transit. I'm going to make lots of comparisons, so it should be interesting. Oh no, I just messed up here. 10 seconds. The interface for streaming on YouTube is a little much. It can be quite confusing. Let's see. Okay, so please don't send repeat questions. If what RM stands for is my name, Reece Martin, which I think you can take a look on the channel to find out about that. And go check out two more things before I talk about today's topic. Go check out the B channel, which is linked on the main channel. That's where I make my behind the scenes videos and other stuff that's too casual to fit on the main channel. What was I going to say? If you haven't, consider supporting on Patreon or YouTube memberships. You get access to cool emojis like the following that I'm about to send, which are quite fun, I think. And oh my, okay, restore chat, go like this, pop this out. But yeah, also, next stream is linked down below. So I'm going to now discuss the difference between good transit and great transit. So I want to take you on a little journey here across a bunch of cities. So I think there are a lot of things that divide transit systems between being good and being great, but it's in almost every category. You can basically look at a transit system that's sort of adequate and then a transit system that does something great. And so the first comparison I would make is look at wayfinding. So if you want an example of a system that does it okay, look at Toronto. Toronto has pretty clear route numbers, it has pretty clear signage and the like, and I think it does wayfinding pretty well. But if you want a comparison of cities that do wayfinding great, I would say London, Singapore, Tokyo, Seoul. And what makes those cities better is a number of elements. And the point of what I'm saying here is that, you know, even when you think your city has gotten something right, there's always further you can go to make things better. And even systems that maybe don't have tons of money, can't do incredible infrastructure, can't pump out massive amounts of surface, wayfinding is one of those examples of things that any system can do. You know, it doesn't actually take a team of graphic designers to make an okay, like a decently good wayfinding system. Maybe a masterful one, yes, but to make a good one, you don't actually need, I don't think, a team of incredible graphic designers. And so the differences, I would say, is look at the way the London Underground map shows connectivity between systems. So you don't just have the tube, as Toronto's map basically just has the subway and streetcar. You have the regional trains and like. You also have symbols that show you where you can connect to national rail. You have kind of geographic elements. You have all kinds of different elements that improve the experience. Within stations, you have, I think, more clarity as to what track leads to what location. You have just aesthetic designs like the tube roundel, you know, the symbol of the tube, the bar and the circle. I think that's a beautiful symbol, and it's used really extensively. And, you know, Toronto sort of has its version of that, but I just think the roundel is better, and it's something that's been sort of modernized over time, which I think makes it just wonderful. In the case of the cities I mentioned in Asia, there's so many things they do well for wayfinding, and it tends to have to do with multilingualism, which I think is so interesting, especially considering that here in Canada, we have multiple languages, and in Toronto, we have so many languages, so we should be focused on making a multilingual transit system, and this is probably something I should be tweeting, honestly, because I think it's such a hot take, but Toronto has, I don't know, like 100+ languages spoken. Why don't we have a system that uses the exact same wayfinding standards as like Asian systems that often have announcements in 4 languages? So what they often do in these systems is they actually give stations a letter and a number for every station. And what that means is that to identify a certain station, you only need to know the letter and the number. And Mexico City, which I talked about recently, if you haven't seen that video, make sure to go check it out, had a system that sort of existed for the same purpose, which was symbols for each station. But I would argue that while Mexico City's system is more beautiful and it's more sort of artistic, it's inferior because once people do, like once literacy isn't an issue, and even if literacy is an issue, I don't think like a single letter and number is a huge issue. It's more reading. I think that this system is better because you can do a lot of interesting things. For example, you could say this is the plus direction, this is the minus direction. If you're at, let's say, this line is the A line, and I'm at station 16, I need to go to station 4, I'm going to go in the minus direction. If we need to meet at X station, it might have letters for different lines. And so there's so many things that you can do that are just incredibly innovative with wayfinding that I don't even think we think about doing in North America that could really enhance our systems. So that's the first point I wanted to make about wayfinding. The next will be about service, but I'm going to go through a few more chat messages in the meantime, and then I'll swing back around. And this is your general reminder to go check out today's videos, especially one that I collabed with on Downey Downey Live with, because I think it's a good video. It's worth checking out. YouTube isn't recommending enough related content. Do you have a list of other related content? That's a funny question. Jeff Marshall's stuff is great. I think Jago Hazard stuff is great as well. There isn't that much content, I think, that is about the nitty-gritty of transit. I guess it really depends. I do so many different things on my channel. I have vlog style stuff. I have informative stuff that's mainly about teaching you what a network looks like or telling you about a certain aspect of transit or railways or something like that. So you might have to be more specific to me with what you like, because I think there are channels that do a lot of the elements of things I do on my channel, but I don't know if there's any that does all of them, which is something I like to say is unique about this channel. But I'm gonna take a drink of water. Have you seen the Veritasium video on clickbaiting? Probably. I've watched most Veritasium videos. I love them. Do you reckon White Rock, BC will ever get passenger rail service to Vancouver? I'm actually, I lived in White Rock, BC for a long time. I don't think it really needs passenger rail service. I think good bus service would be far more useful, but it's possible, maybe in a decade or two, because there is a rail line. But I would love to see the realignment of the rail line that has been proposed before in White Rock, which is a very interesting project. The EU plug legislation will be nice. Yeah, it would be if it worked, but I'm just not sure it will work. I am moving next month, so hopefully people are excited about new content, like vlogs and stuff, and being able to go in depth. I talked about this a bit in my B channel video, which again, go check it out if you haven't. But I think one thing that's going to be really fun and interesting about the move is that I'll be able to cover accessibility upgrades. I know that's something Jeff Marshall covered in some tube stations, and I would love to do that. It's something I thought about doing before, but I felt that it was not a big enough video to go all the way out to a certain subway station to just cover that one element. But two things. One thing is that there are two levels of accessibility upgrades. There's the accessibility upgrade where they kind of just add elevators in an existing space, and it's literally just elevators added to the existing station. It's almost always not very interesting. But then there's the second tier, second exit ones, which open up a whole new area of the station, sometimes a new concourse, again, a new entrance, and those are the type of ones I would love to check out. I still haven't checked out the second entrance at Wellesley Station. I'm going to make a video about that, I think, because it used to be my home station, but that's the sort of thing I'm interested in doing. Are the Richmond Hill and Scarborough extension being delayed until the Ontario line is open because of overcrowding? Nope, they're just taking a long time. The Scarborough subway is moving along really fast, though. I believe they're already building the tunnel boring machine for it. Did you say Paris or no? I didn't say Paris, no, but that's another city that does wayfinding really well. And I would mention that just because I don't mention a city when I'm talking about something doesn't mean it isn't great. There are a lot of cities that do wayfinding great. I'm just thinking of a few particular examples, and like lots of cities do it great for different reasons. And I think that's, that's generally the story, is every city does something great, and often they do things great for different reasons. What is your take on the capacity of the stations on the egg? I'm not sure what that's referring to. If you want to elaborate, I'll try to answer it. And again, after I've gone through a few more of these chat messages, I'll go back to my main topic. There's so little signage from Union Station Rail to Union Station Bus Terminal. So this is a failing I have, but since I know Union Station well, I don't even look at the signs, but I believe, yeah, they could be a lot better. But I think that's a project that's actively being worked on. If you saw my video where I interviewed Tobin Allison, you should go check that out, because Metrolinx is designing a bunch of new wayfinding, and I took the GO train to downtown Toronto yesterday, and one thing I would say is like, I saw some of the new wayfinding on the platform, and it was beautiful. It was great. So I think they are working on that. The Paris gondolas will be very interesting indeed. Can every highway in the suburbs support BRT? Sure, if you wanted to. Urban gondolas are definitely a valid transit mode, but they are something that is very different from other transit modes, and so the way you think about them has to be different. Because they have not that variable capacity compared to other lines, and so again, you just have to think about them. Urban gondolas are the type of thing that makes a lot of sense in a place where you know what you're building for. So I often say the same for light rail, is that it's not a good thing to build often in fast growing cities, because it just very rarely has much room for capacity expansion. The same is true for urban gondolas. And so it's a great technology for connecting, say, a big housing or office development that you know the exact scale of. So you know you're not going to be blowing out your capacity on it. So that's what I would say about urban gondolas. But they're such a great tool, and so many cities could use them, especially for crossing difficult like geographic barriers and scaling elevation, as they do at ski hills. What are your thoughts on HS3? I don't have tons of thoughts, but I think that more high-speed rail is generally good, though high-speed 2 has problems with costs being really high because some of the infrastructure is excessive. So someone's saying, what are your thoughts on Metrolinx's transit symbol, which is just a copy of the MBTA logo? First of all, again, you should go watch my video with Tobin Allison, because it isn't actually the same as the MBTA logo, like the dimensions, etc. aren't the same. But fundamentally, the T logo is used on so many systems, and I think that it's a good logo because people associate it with transit. And in that video, it was interesting because I was sort of walked through how Metrolinx tested it with people, and they literally said to people from all kinds of walks of life, all kinds of geographic areas, what do various symbols represent to you? And the T symbol was the one that came out on top. And again, other systems in Canada use that symbol, like Vancouver, and I believe even there may be a few more larger ones that use it. So I think that it's a good symbol. And I don't think, for example, if every city were to copy London's wayfinding, I wouldn't see that as a bad thing, for example. It's not really a competition, right? So if one city comes up with a really good symbol, then other cities should use it, because that just means that it's easier to use transit in lots of cities. Some countries have standardized wayfinding across the country, like in Germany, for example, and I think a lot of German-speaking countries, the S-Bahn symbol is pretty standardized. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, so someone's saying the Eglinton crosstown trains have less capacity than the Bloor Yonge lines, so why did the stations need to have 2 entrances on each station? I agree in a lot of cases. Some of the big stations, I think having multiple entrances makes sense, but yeah, I mean, based on the capacity that the system will be able to handle, I think a lot of the stations are bigger than they need to be. But yeah, as someone says, having multiple entrances in retrospect is not a bad thing. If you're already building it, then there you go. When you post the Trans-Jakarta video, so I'm not working on one right now, but yeah, generally I would just say, I make videos as I make them, and when I'm interested in doing one on Trans-Jakarta, I'll do it. naming rail lines is something that I think is super city dependent. I love the way London does it. I love the way Delhi does it with colors. Every city, can do its own thing, and some things, there's no right answer for. I'm just quickly scrolling down. So cool. Looks like I got to the bottom of the chat. So I want to talk about the next issue, which is service. So often I think we get into a place where we talk about service as if transit service is very one-dimensional. It's only about frequency, and frequency is so important, but I want to remind people that it's just like wayfinding. Like, you can have good wayfinding and you can have good service, which typically looks like high frequencies, but there are so many layers you can build on top. So in a city like Toronto, what does that necessarily look like? Well, here are some things to think about. And frankly, in any city. Do you have night service? Because people should be able to travel at night. Maybe it's not super high frequency, but whatever. Do you have layered service? And I think layered service is something deeply underappreciated, but some cities like New York were early to it. And that's express and local service. And maybe even super express service. Imagine having, please up your mic. Well, we'll see. I'm not seeing too many complaints, but I'll slightly increase it. If you have 3 levels of service, you can serve even different trips. And so, service is not one-dimensional, and even, frequency is not one-dimensional. A lot of people say that 20 minutes is good, or 15 minutes is good. And I would argue, generally, the more service, the better. One thing that's very interesting in Vancouver is, despite being a small city, the SkyTrain runs better frequencies than any other system in Canada, really. Even at 10 o'clock on a weekend night, you might see trains running every 3 or 4 minutes, or better, honestly. And so, I think that there are so many dimensions we have to think about. And I think that, for example, is why technology is important, because operating high frequencies is going to be linked to grade separation and to potentially automation. And so you sort of have to realize that when people say that, like, oh, the technology doesn't matter, or light rail versus subway doesn't matter, or this and that, it's just about getting the transit. Like, from a high level, yes, and I'm always going to be supportive of transit. But if we want to create great transit systems, we have to think about more than just delivering basic service. We need to think about, where do people want to go? How quickly do they need to get there? What's going to attract people in one area versus another area? And so often these decisions are not just about service, though they are about service. They're often about service plus technology, or service plus station design, or all of these different elements. You could have a system, for example, like a lot of systems in parts of Asia, where you look at the map and it looks fantastic. And as I made a video about this that talks about maps mislead. It talks about how often you'll see a transit map and you might think it's impressive, or you might see another one and think a system's not impressive, and the map is misleading you. And for example, a lot of systems will say stations are interconnected, and they're very poor connections, and poor connections have a real impact. So that's a video I need to make, actually. So this is literally a lot of the time how I get video ideas, is just talking on stream with people. Gotta make sure I note these things down, right? So I get all the good video ideas out there. But there are a lot of systems where you have to walk like 10 minutes between lines. It might be underground, it might be in a tunnel or in a grade separated walkway, and that's great. I'm always going to be supportive of that. But the ideal solution is that, okay, this person is getting dropped onto the is getting the ban hammer. Bang. Okay, I'm not afraid to use a ban hammer. Anyways, so these are elements of systems that we don't often think about. But if you have a long transfer, for example, like as I was talking about, this is a problem not just in one city, but like Delhi has this problem. A lot of cities in other parts of Asia have this problem. Sydney Metro is going to have this problem in some places. Long transfers are just one of those things that you want to avoid. Cross-platform is ideal, but if you can't do cross-platform, get the platforms close together, because if people have to walk between lines, you could really be injecting a lot of time into their trip. It doesn't take very long for a train to go 100 or 200 or 300 meters, especially if it's just a change in alignment, but it could take a person 5-10 minutes to walk that. And if every single person transferring at a major hub has to do that, that is a massive amount of time you've wasted. So that's something to think about. I'm going to talk a bit more about stuff in the chat, and then I'm going to get into another issue of the separation between good transit and bad transit, and will be branding. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to have a glass of water. A drink of water. I don't know why I keep saying glass. Let's scroll up here. So this is a little announcement. If you're not already, if you like making transit maps or you're interested in transit maps, I'm doing a competition on my Discord server, which may interest you. People are being encouraged to make alternate maps of systems. So not fantasy maps. We might do that in the future, but the Discord server is full of people who are really talented at making maps. And so if you haven't joined it, go join it and take a look at people's maps in the map making channel. But I think this is an interesting opportunity to see alternate ways of representing cities and representing transit networks, but also it's a fun competition. I'm going to be making a video about it soon. And the first one is on Toronto, but the next one is going to be on the London Docklands, and I'm going to do lots of different places. Like maybe I'll do Delhi, I'll do Mexico City. Lots of different cities around the world that people are unfamiliar with. And the reason that's good is because when you ask a bunch of people from Toronto to make maps of the Toronto Transit Network, you get a bunch of maps on black backgrounds. Not a bad thing, but people tend to need to look at a system that's totally different from their own, and then they're gonna do some things that are different than someone who's local might do. And so I think that's a really interesting opportunity. And if you're interested in map making, or even just taking a look at what people have made so far before the video comes out, go check it out on Discord. The other things to mention is, again, next stream is linked down below in the description. Go check that out. Go check out today's videos on Denver and with Downey Live. And consider supporting as a Patreon or YouTube member to get access to priority comment replies, because I get a ton of comments these days, and replying to all of them is not really feasible. Generally, my policy, as a lot of YouTubers' policy is to not reply to comments after like the first day or two of a video being released. The next thing I want to mention too is if you want to reach out to me, because a lot of people have been reaching out to me, the best way to do that is probably email. But Instagram and Twitter also work. If you try to reach out to me another way, I probably am not going to see it, because I get a ton of messages and it's just hard to reply to everything if it's not sort of in a centralized location, because I'll literally just forget that I have messages in a certain place. So let me go through a few other comments here. I would say it's generally better to underbuild a station if you're uncertain of the demand. If it's a major interchange or hub, or you know it's going to be very busy, then build it. I wouldn't say it's overbuilding. Build a big station, and that's great. All stations should be designed to be expanded in the future with knockout panels and the like. You know, if you have adjacent developments, build knockout panels so they can link into your station. It's just an easy win. And perhaps transit agencies can even charge a fee for a direct connection to a station, which is hopefully high enough that the transit agency makes some money to recoup the cost of the station, and low enough that developers actually are willing to pay it, because some probably would be like, I don't care about my residents, I'm not going to pay this fee, you have to walk outside to get to the station. But that's something you can do. But for non-interchange stations, build them with provision for extra entrances, but then don't build 10 entrances, because you don't need it, and we can always retrofit, but you can't get money back you spent on a station that didn't need the money in the first place. Vancouver is a small city. I'm from Vancouver, but it's a small city. But it's not really, yeah, it's one of those things, it's not a competition or anything. What high-speed rails planned for Canada? Will VIA be the operator? HFR is sort of semi-high-speed, and yes, VIA will be the operator. Made a bunch of videos on that. I think the one that said Canada's getting high-speed rail, ? Is the one where I talk about it. Yep, for plus or cross interchanges, a simple set of escalators can work well. But, you know, even for a simple interchange, you can get it right or you can get it wrong. It still looks sort of like a cross if you have the platforms lined like this, but you want to have the centers close to each other. And you probably want to have diamond shaped walls so that people can access all parts of the other platform from the other level. So basically, you don't dump everyone into a single part of the platform, even if it's the middle. Yep, crowding is certainly an important consideration, and it's something that that is thought about when transit systems are designed. But often the problem is not that people aren't thinking about designing for space; it's that uh, the believed demand is lower than it actually is. And I think in Canada we almost always underpredict how much demand there will be for transit because people like transit here. Um, What do you think about is I think Bogor or pronounce something like that reopening its tram? I don't know much about the city, but new tram is great. What do you think the ideal form of transit for those cities home to a huge number of historical sites that cannot afford to turn those into massive construction sites? I mean, I would say look at cities in places like Italy. They build metros, trams, everything, and they have tons of historic sites, especially in places like Rome. So I think historic sites are something that can be worked around. What's the top? Uh, uh, what's top of the list of new places you want to visit? Oh, that's so interesting. Wow, that's a really good question. I've visited a lot of places in my life. I haven't traveled to Zurich before, so Zurich is a city I'd like to visit. Munich is another city I'd like to visit. Certain cities in Italy and Spain are places I'd like to visit. Northern Japan, I'd love to visit. Um, I'd like to go back to Taiwan and visit more cities in Taiwan. So those are some ones I think about. Parts of Australia too. I haven't been to Perth, so that would be cool. Do you think Ottawa Union Station will ever be used as a railway station again? I sort of doubt it, but it would be incredibly cool if it were. If the Expo Line production branch were cut back to Lougheed, could the Millennium Line run at better headways than at present? I understand this would make SFU connections worse, but and then it ends. If you don't know what is being referred to, take a look at the Vancouver SkyTrain map. Basically, the Expo line has a branch that interlines with the Millennium line. The answer is yes, because obviously there's a limited track capacity. So there are a few possible solutions to that problem, and so here's what I would say. You could turn some trains at Lougheed, since there is that third platform. You could still maintain two platforms to, well, as you're saying, cut service back to Lougheed, turn some Expo Line trains back there. Another option is build a third track to SFU and then run a service like every 15 minutes to SFU or something like that. That's another option if you really want to maintain access. Other options, yeah, those are the main options. I've also suggested before that we might want to turn that branch into a shuttle train that is independent of the Expo Line and Millennium Line because it's not super high demand. So there might be a case for that as well. Or transfer it to the Millennium Line. That's another option. I actually think the SkyTrain for Surrey group is proposing to turn that into a branch that crosses into Surrey. So that's an option, but there's a problem with that, which is that Surrey probably deserves more service than would be provided by that branch. Or justifies more service is probably the right term to use, since I don't like when the word deserved is used, because cities are not people. They don't deserve or not deserve things. They can justify or not justify things. So that's my thinking on that. I didn't hear about an Amtrak derailment that happened recently, but maybe someone can link it in the chat. Subbed because of Mike Downey's YouTube video. So happy to hear that. I'm always happy to have more people checking out the channel, and always happy to talk about transit with more people and show people more transit systems around the world and in Canada, and just interesting trains and infrastructure and all kinds of stuff. Whoa, flew down here to the bottom. I'm reading this chat, yeah. What is the minimum population of a metro area to warrant higher order transit than buses? I would say a few hundred thousand. I'm really interested in seeing how Montreal's light system will open once it opens in 2023. I'm gonna say it's not light. Uh, it's not light actually, Tim. Uh, that's something that has been a bugbear of mine for a long time. The English language discussion of it, and even the French language discussion, refers to it as light, but it isn't really light. The trains are 3 meters wide, which is, if you know about subways, that's like the wide size of subway trains. Subways in places like Montreal and Vancouver and Paris and London, a lot of them are a lot narrower, about 2.5 meters. So these are big trains, and they'll be long, like roughly 80 meters long, which is, again, that's about standard for a lot of metro systems around the world. So they're not really light, but it's going to be a fantastic system, and I actually believe it's going to start service in 2022, so even sooner for you. What are your opinions on the Green Line extension in Boston? I think it's a good project, but the the whole price and the potential project collapse and all of that was a big concern. So yeah, good, but with some caveats. Is the U.S.-Canada border open to travelers? It's really complicated. I think it's open from the U.S. to Canada, but not vice versa. And if you fly, it's different. If you go across the border on land or water or whatever. Train service, I don't believe, is really operating, which I would be preferring to take. And you still have to get tests done and stuff, so I wouldn't really consider it open. And COVID is still a major issue in Canada and the US, so not really. I want to travel to the US so badly. There's so many videos I want to make about some of the great transit systems in the Northeast. You know, the subway in New York, WMATA, and the Chicago L, but obviously systems in other cities as well as just riding Amtrak and going and checking out the beautiful new Acela trains. Truly, they're wonderful. But I can't until I feel like travel is truly back to normal, and it's just not there yet. It's also just, the logistical headaches right now are not fun, and plus a lot of transit agencies aren't operating a ton of service, which means that if I go, it might not be great for filming, because if I have to wait like 20 minutes between trains, I can't get that many clips of trains, and so I'm still going to wait a bit until things, I think, are back to where they need to be. For transfers in station, how do you quantify the transfer penalty to a rider? Is it like a ratio of transfer time to vehicle traveling time? I think that's a good way to quantify it. I think that you have to quantify it based on so many factors. So the amount of time people are spending on a vehicle, yeah, if people are spending a very short period of time on a vehicle, they don't want to do a really long transfer. But also, if people are going to travel very fast, then it can be justified. So some of those crossrail stations, for example, in London, they look deep, and like the transfers are going to be pretty long. I could definitely see some people taking 5 minutes to transfer at some of these stations. But since the service is so fast, it could be justified because the speed might be so high that even a short trip is going to get you a very far distance. And so you sort of have to see the trade-off. If you're getting a fast service, you can probably afford more transfer penalty. I have thought about a video on ferries as transit. There is one coming. Stay tuned for that. Have you played Train Sim World 2? Yes, but I had a lot of problems with it. Thoughts on the Chicago L? Already talked about it earlier in the video, so you're going to have to go back and look at it. Do you think it would make sense to have a metro in Winnipeg? Maybe a light metro. But in Canada, we probably would build light rail, which, if it's a Calgary-style light rail, might be okay. Would it be possible to have international GO service to Buffalo? I don't think that's a great idea, even though it has been discussed. Are you going to do a piece on the Quebec City tram? Yes, I have one planned. It's sort of been delayed a bit because this month has been very hectic with collabs and lots of videos and all of these things. But yes, I have a video coming. Where do you think the NYC subway will be in the next 30 to 50 years? I think if things don't get put back together and it doesn't get addressed, it might not be much further along than it is today, which is concerning. Will there be GO service to Sudbury or Kingston? Probably, eventually, someday. Well, wait, Sudbury? No, probably not Sudbury. Sudbury is very far, but Kingston I could see. Kingston, sadly, is probably within long-distance commuting range with faster trains. What's your first memory of a transit project or using transit? Probably just riding the SkyTrain in Vancouver sitting at the front. Wow. If you were Phil Verster and given unlimited money by the next Ontario government, how would you expand GO service over the next 25 years? So what I would do is quad track all of the central corridors where they aren't, though most of them are, fortunately. I would run a rapid local express mix, so you'd have fast trains bypassing stations, and you have local trains stopping at most stations. So you could do more service patterns. You might have a skip stop express. You might have different. So you probably have, I would say, 3 tiers of service: a really fast super express, an express, and a local, akin to like the New York subway or a lot of systems in Japan. I would upgrade stations to make them accessible, as well as have level boarding, and I'd probably move to high floor trains. I would expand service on the London line, but I would make it way faster. I would do all the track and infrastructure upgrades to make it viable to commute to places like Waterloo. And I would start to turn Waterloo and Hamilton into their own commuting hubs because they're important locations. I would extend rail service probably to Orillia from Barrie, and I would speed up the Barrie line to give us more capacity there. I would also try to extend service out to Peterborough, and yeah, probably Kingston. Since we're doing stuff on the west and the south to Niagara, let's extend to those other cities to provide better service. That is layered again on top. Via can be the super express. The other services are more local layers that are probably cheaper and more frequent than Via would be. I would also obviously fully electrify everything. I would work it out with CP and CN, and I would do the grade separations necessary to bring full service to the Milton line. I would figure out how to do the Midtown Toronto line and do that, build new connections at Summerhill and I guess DuPont as well, so that we could have links to the subway, as well as moving Agincourt Station south to create Agincourt Cruise, if I can call it that, a cross station at Agincourt. One station is the Midtown Toronto line, one station is the Stouffville line north-south, and that would be an epic location for a station that would create great connectivity in North Scarborough, which isn't going to have a great transit hub. It's going to have a subway station, but that would be a truly epic scale transit hub, and there could be a huge bus exchange there. And since it's close to the 401, think about it, you could have some really cool express bus services on the 401 linking into it, maybe with a dedicated bus ramp since we have unlimited money. I'm trying to think of what else I would do. Obviously, Up Express gets electrified, high floor, slightly longer trains. Otherwise, I think the infrastructure can be maintained, though we'd probably divert the Kitchener line under Pearson Schiphol style. So that's another thing I would do. I would probably build a station at the West Toronto Diamond, create a West Croix or Cruise, if you want to call it that, another cross station between the Midtown line and the Kitchener line, and maybe another one connecting to the Barrie line on the Davenport Diamond. I'm trying to think of what else I would do. These are all the things I would do: station upgrades, all of that good stuff, redevelop station locations, new housing, new offices, and the like on the parking lots. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Thank you for the super chat. By 2045, will GO Transit have 10 lines? That's not clear. Can a monorail replace BRT for higher capacity? Definitely. Monorails would have much higher capacity. What do you think about the Minneapolis light rail service? I think Minneapolis could have done better than light rail, but it's for a light rail system, it's pretty good. Though I believe the Green Line is like mainly in the median. I feel like that's not necessarily great. Santiago is considering a tram connection to the airport. Thoughts? What are your favorite airport connections around the world? It's okay, but like, trams are good in dense areas where you need high capacity and short trips. Connecting the airport, it's usually far from the city. I know in Santiago, it's not near the city center really. Extend the metro or build an express rail line, which Santiago has some lines kind of going to the north, so that could be a good option, but that's what I would say. Favorite links? Heathrow's great for having lots of links, though people don't like that it doesn't connect to the wider region. It's a good case to be made there. Schiphol in Amsterdam, as I mentioned before, is awesome. Station's right under it, and it connects to other cities as well, so that's a great example too. What point does it make to prioritize expanding coverage over improving existing service? I mean, it really depends on land use. If you have sprawling suburbs, then covering more ground might be valuable. But if you have a really dense city, then you just want to pump through more service, right? So you've got to balance these things, and it really depends on the city and the service and the amount of money you have. Did Go Transit change the name of the Kitchener line? Yes, it was originally the Georgetown line. They've changed names many times. It usually reflects determinist, but not always, because the Stouffville line, for example, doesn't end at Stouffville. Do you think the Bi-level is the most successful rail car that's been designed in North America? Probably. Yeah, or one of those, or the Bud RDCs. Hey Reece, glad to see you moving downtown like the rest of us. Haha. Once things are settled, we should do a bar. You should do a bar meetup. Also, what do you think of the lack of Apple Wallet phone Prestos? Some of these things I'm not going to answer here, but send me a DM. Seriously, Adam, I'll happily chat with you about this. I am planning a meetup in Toronto, probably. Things are a bit up in the air because of COVID and stuff. But eventually there will be some meetups if people are interested in meeting me. I'm just an average transit YouTuber. But yeah. What cities do you think have the best intertransit? What cities... sorry, I need to make a note here. What cities do you think have the best intertransit connections, like rail to air or bus, ferry, tram? That's something I'm going to talk about in my quality of transfers video. I'm going to add a note, because you've added a very interesting thing to mention, which is different modes look different. Subways are underground, trams are on streets, usually. Ferries usually don't go on land. So how do you make good transfers? Anyways, that's an aspect of my how to make good transfers. It's an aspect of the video I'm going to do. So I'll leave it to this video. Hello, did I come in time? I think things are ending fairly soon, so you're a bit late to the party, but we'll see what's happening. Do you see California high-speed rail opening before the end of the decade? No. No. Wondering if you're exploring Singapore's train. Not sure what you're necessarily asking about there. Thoughts on the Macau LRT? It's not an LRT! Don't call it an LRT! I was going to do a video at one point about why LRT is this Ponzi scheme. I wasn't going to call it a Ponzi scheme, but I was going to make this whole grand conspiratorial video about LRT and things that make me angry about it. But one thing that I cannot stand is the term is chosen. Like, a lot of advocates of light rail choose very specifically to use that term, but it sows so much confusion because, yes, Macau's system is called LRT, but it's really like a light metro. It uses crystal mover technology. I think it's a cool system, though. Yeah. Anyways, you set me off a bit. 10 seconds. Let me see this. Thoughts on a Javelin-style service connecting Toronto to Buffalo? Maybe. Again, this is the same sort of thing. Maybe, but the problem is that I don't think generally the approach with Canada-US like relations with regard to trains is Canada spends a ton on infrastructure to make it easier for us to connect to the US. But this is a case where the US would have to spend money on infrastructure to make it easier for Americans to connect to Canada. And I'm not sure if the US is going to spend that money. For example, we're not going to want to build a ton of stuff in Canada to do that service. So you have to do the pre-clearance facilities, etc. on the Buffalo side. And also, I'm just not sure, like, Intel Go is really, like, properly operating as that Southern Ontario train operation. Like, it's starting to with London and Niagara. Once that's solidified, maybe talk about it. Because, yeah, like, it does sort of make sense. But also, it's not going to be Javelin speeds, so there's a lot of things we need to work on. What do you think of the suburban rail around Manchester? I'll probably make a specific video about this, so I would stay tuned for that. When GO trains go to London, will the Kitchener line be renamed to the London line? Probably not, because the Lakeshore West isn't known as the Niagara Falls line or the Hamilton line, despite those being, like, important termini. It would be kind of cool, though, I guess, the London line. While do unlimited budget Montreal next. Maybe if someone sends me a super chat. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually planning on doing crayoning videos like I did for Toronto for other cities. But people then made this distinction that you should do one that's sort of my realistic stuff, which, like, if it's realistic, I like realistic because I feel like there's a hope of it happening. Whereas the unrealistic stuff, like what I described, a lot of it's probably never going to happen. But that's sort of my thinking. Would you agree the Etobicoke RT should be built? Not as planned. I mean, I think there's better. I think there are other options that will be that could be better than the way it was planned. Do you think tearing down the Union canopy with the new one they bed? Sorry, maybe I'm just tired, but I'm having problems talking properly. I've been talking a lot today, videos and stuff. Do you think tearing down the canopy? So yeah, basically, should they have just made the whole canopy new instead of just part of it? Yes, definitely. The historic canopy, I'm sorry, it should be torn down. It's not attractive. I don't think the historic value is really there. And I think that historic stuff should be only maintained to the extent that it doesn't impede us from doing something important in the future. So when it comes to impeding us from delivering good transit service, as the train shed does, I think tear it down. It shouldn't stop us. Transit service is more important. Also, I question its historic value. And anyways, if you tore it down, you could tore it down gently and reassemble it somewhere else. Turn it into a farmer's market or something, and then you have the best of both worlds. Not my idea, by the way. Do you think the SC Mag... Oh, sorry, I got shot down to the bottom. Do you think the SC Maglev will open before 2030? Probably not, but at least it has the excuse of being an incredibly unique system. Why aren't more tunnels built with NATM? Cheaper than TBMs, less disruption than cut and cover. That's the new Austrian tunneling method. I think it's really, like, tunneling is super context dependent, right? Some cities it is easier, but some cities, because of their soils, it's not necessarily easier. Mining is often actually can be quite expensive depending on your soil. In a place like Sydney, where it's all sandstone, then it's great. We can just get out a road header and start drilling, but it's not true of every city. Yep, there's a Vancouver video planned. Thoughts on Hong Kong's LRT? It's actually LRT this time. Let's just list it. I'll make a video about that. I'm going to make a video about it. So I'll discuss it in said video. I'm not sure what the question, what are the most proposed LRTs that can be part of the TTC network means, but so yeah, maybe if you want to clarify. I'm going to talk about my one last thing about great transit versus good transit, and that's branding. It sort of ties in to wayfinding, but I would argue branding is more about how you sell your transit and how you make it attractive in appearance and the like. So the thing I love that LA Metro does, and LA Metro has so many problems, but like, see, this is what I'm talking about. Every city does a few things at least right. And the thing that LA Metro does great is their vehicles, they look consistent. You look at a vehicle and it has like this consistent livery style. It has a consistent look. And so you're like, that vehicle, definitely an LA Metro vehicle. And I think that helps with transit systems. People can identify the transit, they're comfortable with it, but also when they're just about through the city, they see there's a transit stop, there's a bus, there's a train, and it gives them the sense that it's everywhere, there's lots of service and the like, and that helps make transit a better seeming option to people. And so I think that sort of presence of a good branding of transit is so important. It's the same way that the London Underground Roundel or the MTR logo in Hong Kong have become symbols of the city, and they're tied into the city. And when you see it, you know what it means, and you know what that represents. And I think that's so valuable. And cities like Toronto could really learn from that. I mean, I think that's sort of the plan with our wayfinding schemes. But I don't think we go far enough, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we could do better, and I think we will eventually. But this is one thing that LA does really well. That also looks like great station designs and the way you name your services. I mean, I cannot stand that the Eglinton Crosstown is basically called the Eglinton Crosstown. I just think it's not the greatest description for that line. So I think branding is critical, and I think that, again, it's one of those things. You can have a great transit system, great service, and the like. I think a lot of transit systems in Russia are like this. I think they really well built, great service and the like, but I think they could learn from other cities' branding, for example. And so just another element of what separates good from great. I'm going to respond to a few more messages here, and then that's going to be it for the stream tonight, because I've got more videos to make, because there's so much transit to talk about. If you haven't already, consider supporting the channel on Patreon and YouTube membership. to get cool emojis and behind the scenes and early release videos and all of that, and to help me bring you more videos, because it really does help a lot. Also, next stream is linked in the description below, so if you want to watch the next one and learn more about transit and chat with me, you can do so there. Also, if you haven't, again, check out today's videos because I think they are really good. So I'm going to answer a few more questions, and then that'll be it for tonight. Do you think we might see a new metro system era in the US like the early 1900s and 70s? I would love to. And I think it would be the perfect time, because I think we've come to a place where around the world we've decided what a standard metro looks like. And that's what we've always needed. We've needed standardization. Like I talked about in my video about metro standardization recently. That looks like a 1500 volt overhead line, a certain width, trains that look like Sydney Metro or the REM basically, or some trains from other companies. Any hope on a video on the autonomous transit on a way as a way of bridging the gap between pods and current buses? To be honest, I don't really want to talk too much about automated transit, because I think that, well, I do think it has value, and I think that people shouldn't dismiss that it has value. I think that it's often toted and touted as this way of making regular transit seem irrelevant, when it really isn't. It's a fill in the gaps thing, the same way that shuttle buses are. It doesn't replace regular buses and metros and stuff. So that's sort of my hesitancy. Thoughts on the Huron-Ontario LRT? Shouldn't have been LRT. That's my usual take on that line. Are there any subway projects planned in North America that use cut and cover for the majority of the length? Planned? I don't think so. Canada Line did, though, obviously, but that was 10 years ago. I just wished LA distinguished their modes better. By having the same letters across all services, it makes it look like the J line is placed on the same level as the B line. You are absolutely right. That is a wonderful point. I think that you should distinguish your modes, and I think that that's something that, say, London does pretty well, right? They have modes well distinguished, and they're even distinguished between like capacity. So the DLR, even though the service level is pretty comparable to the tube, is seen as separate as the tube, and I think that's actually a good approach. I wouldn't extend Line 1 to Canada's Wonderland unless it was above ground, it was cheap, and Canada's Wonderland was paying. Maybe if Canada's Wonderland redevelops its giant parking lots into condos or a giant mall or something, it could be justified. That could be a really good option for them to help expand to a 24 hour, 365, like year-round operation. I know they're doing some stuff in the winter, but you really have to do more. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone so much for coming. Thanks for everyone supporting the channel and talking transit with me. My next stream is going to be in 2 weeks on Saturday, but earlier this time, depending on where you are. It might not be earlier. It might be a totally different time. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to say, which should have Huron-Ontario been? Light Metro. Elevated Light Metro. That's my thoughts. Thanks everyone so much for coming out, and yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.